It being a little after 10 and a quorum being present, we will call to order the June 18th Peninsula RPTO meeting. And I welcome everyone on this lovely sunshiny Friday. And as is our custom, because we are recorded, and I want to make sure everyone realizes we are being recorded, I introduce the members looking at my screen so that the public is aware of who we are and who we represent. So when I'm looking at my screen, the first person I see is Sarah Black, and she is the RPTO coordinator. I am Beck Ashby. I am chairing the Peninsula RPTO this year, and I am a city council person from the city of Port Orchard. Tracy Parker is here representing the Squaxin tribe. David Fort is here representing Kitsap County. Sarah Crouch is here representing Jefferson Transit, who is our lead physical agent, and that is Sarah's role in our organization. Dick Taylor represents the Port of Shelton. Michael Bateman represents the city of Paulsbo. He is a public works staff, or he's an engineer. He's a traffic engineer in Paulsbo. And what difference a year makes, Lindsey Schwarm Warren, whose name I was afraid to say a year ago, represents the city of Port Angeles. Mike Cardwell is with the Quinault tribe. Kevin, and help me with your last name, Galatia?
Close, Galatia.
Galatia, okay. Clallam Transit, correct?
Yes, I'm here as the alternate for Brendan Myers. So
okay, I was looking for Brendan and didn't see him. And then I see Steve Gray, who is with Clallam County. Ed Coviello is with Kitsap Transit, and he is the other RPTO coordinator. Mike Uzin is a consultant that is doing work for the RPTO on the electrical vehicle and will be talking to us in just a few minutes. Chris Hartman, Port of Port Angeles. Matt Kluntz is with the city of Sequim. And I'm doing all this from memory, so you guys, if I miss it, please let me know. Mike Rinkenberg is with Mason Transit. Wendy Clark-Getson is with Jefferson County Public Works and is chair of our technical committee. Tammy Rupert is our secretary and executive director of Jefferson Transit. Ariel Spieser is with the city of Port Townsend, a council member. And Dennis Engel is our head troublemaker and with the Washington Department of Transportation. That's who I see on my screen. Did I miss anyone? Okay, and with that, we will go ahead and move forward. Did everyone, when we talk about the agenda today, we are going to massage it a little bit in that, oh, here comes Marty. Marty's with the Skokomish tribe. With our agenda today, we have some timing issues. And normally when we have presentations, we like to put a space in between them so that we can fully digest the first presentation before we have the second. Because of timing issues today, we're going to put our presentations back to back. And the two fillers that we had in between there, talking about our draft Title VI plan and our legislative update, we will move to after our broadband presentation. So is there any other corrections or additions anyone would like to see to the agenda? Seeing none, we will move forward with the agenda with the alterations as I've mentioned. And here comes Rachel Anderson. She is with a council person with City of Sequim. So we have our consent calendar, what we call the consent calendar. I used to call it the consent agenda. We have the minutes from the April 16th meeting and the our public participation plan protocols. Is there anyone that would like to remove either of those items from the consent agenda and move them to a business item? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Move to accept the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second, Michael?
Second.
I thought so. Okay, is there anyone who would be inclined to vote against approving the consent agenda? I will ask that a second time. Is there anyone who would vote against approving the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved by unanimous consent.
Could we get an approval of the agenda too?
Oh, okay. Is there anyone?
Just to clarify.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as modified?
Move to approve as modified.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. You're a quick learner, Michael Bateman. Is there anyone who would be inclined to vote against approving the agenda, the modified agenda? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would vote against approving the modified agenda? Seeing none, the modified agenda is approved with unanimous consent. So our first action item today is approval of our UpWP, our work plan for the next biennium. And I wanted to chat about this just a little bit. The changes that we've made this year is this is not an annual UpWP. This is our work program for the biennium. So it's covering 2 years. And when you look at it, you will notice that our budget is less than it has been the last biennium. And that is because the allocation that we're receiving from the state is roughly 15% reduced from what it had been previous, no, 10% than what it had been previously. So it gives us a little less discretionary money. It does allow us to complete all of our mandatory work programs and also offer, I believe, additional value to our membership. So we reviewed the UpWP in April. We talked about it in February. We reviewed it in depth in April. We had a meeting with the Department of Transportation reviewing it, and they offered, had some questions, offered some ideas. Thera went back and modified it. I shouldn't say modded, that sounds like we made great changes. We didn't, but we did enhance some of the language. So with that, the UpWP before you looks very much like it did. It didn't change any of the work program from what we talked about in April. But what has come to our attention recently, and I mean very recently, is what we had assumed or been led to believe that $80,000 was going to be made available to us for the Human Services Transportation Plan. And that money is still being offered to us. However, what we've learned is that this potentially may be federal dollars. And federal money, as you all know within your individual jurisdictions, requires different sets of policies and procedures and protocols. And we have not had an opportunity yet to fully digest what it would mean for the RPTO to accept federal money. We're not even sure we're able to accept federal money. So our request today to the group is to approve the UpWP as it is presented and allow both our coordinators, our physical agent, our executive committee, and our lead planning agency to do more due diligence. And if we need to make an amendment to the UpWP in any way, whether it is listing that these are not state funds, which is what you see before you today, and they're in fact federal funds, or if we're unable to accept the federal funds, we're just asking you, because we do want to move forward accepting our UpWP and the work program. What we're concerned about is the source of some of the funding that may be available to us, and it may require an amendment in August. So with that, I would open it for either a motion or discussion. And Thera, I know, has very in-depth knowledge of what the work program will look like over the next 2 years. Would someone like to make a motion to accept the UPWP?
Move to accept the UPWP as presented and described.
Second by Lindsey.
Thank you. And for our audience, I did introduce Rachel from the city of Sequim, and I see that Mr. Ed Stern from the city of Paulsbo has also joined us. And so has Commissioner Randy Netherland from Mason County. Is there any discussion on the motion to accept the UPWP as described and presented?
Can I clarify, would this motion be to approve resolution 03-2021, adopting the state fiscal year 2022-2023 UPWP as presented?
Yes.
Just we put a resolution.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Move to approve the resolution as stated.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any discussion, any further discussion? Okay, with that, is there anyone who would be choosing to vote or desiring to vote against the motion to approve the UPWP? I will ask for a second time. Is there anyone who would be wishing to vote against approving the UPWP? Hearing none, the UPWP as presented in Resolution 2103 is approved with unanimous consent. I will also direct everyone to, can you see? I don't think I can do that. In your packets, the staff report has at the top requested action. That's the words for the motion. Okay, I asked her to put it there. I said, can we have the words for the motion on our staff report? And so it's up there. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I hadn't gotten quite that far down.
Yeah, I know. We're kind of moving through this because I want to give our folks plenty of time, our presenters plenty of time to present. And then we have our bylaw review. Sarah, were you going to take that or did you want me to take it? How did we want to handle the bylaw review?
You're on a roll.
Okay.
And I think, you were really the spearhead behind all of this since before I got here. So I think,
Okay.
but I'm happy to, yeah.
Oh, that's fine. We had, according to our bylaws, we're required to review our bylaws every 2 years. And so we did. We had a ad hoc, a subcommittee set up, and we met one day in May, I believe it was. Those who were present at the meeting were Rachel Anderson from Sequim, myself, Wendy Clark Getson from Jefferson County's Public Works, John Clausen, the Executive Director of Kitsap Transit, Dennis Engel from the Department of Transportation, Brendan Meyer, and I believe he was, I'm not sure if he was representing Column Transit, I'm assuming he was. Randy Netherland was there, Mason County Commissioner, Mike Ringenberg from Mason Transit, Dick Taylor from Portage Shelton, and Thera and Ed Coviello were there. And basically, we reviewed globally the bylaws. We went through each section. As many of you are aware, we spent several months updating these bylaws when we transitioned from DOT as our lead planning agency to Kitsap Transit as our lead planning agency. So these bylaws had been thoroughly vetted, what, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. And the committee felt that they were working very effectively for us and that there wasn't any reason to, nothing was broke. We didn't have anything to fix. We noted that we were in our bylaws required to make a policy regarding amendments to the UPWP and creation of the UPWP, and we will complete that action. Other than that, the group was happy with the bylaws, and we're recommending that we just certify that they're fine and not make any changes at this point. So are there any questions about the deliberations. I know any of our panelists would be glad to answer those. Or is any discussion, or does anyone wish to make a motion to just acknowledge that the bylaws have been reviewed and are being moved forward with no modifications at this time? Ed Stern, maybe you would like to make that motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ed.
Second.
Thank you, Dick. Are there any discussions or questions about the bylaws and the recommendation from the panel? Seeing none, we will move to vote on the motion to accept the 2021 bylaw review committee recommendation of making no changes to the bylaws. Is there anyone who would be inclined to vote against that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be inclined to vote against that motion? Hearing none, the approval of the recommendation from the Biennial Bylaw Review Committee is accepted, is approved by unanimous consent. So thank you. We are moving right along, and I know now you don't have to listen to me talk. I believe Ed is the next agenda item, and this is regarding a change to the RTIP.
So the request is to approve an amendment to the 2021 to 26 RTIP, which was approved by the executive board back in October of 2020. Clallam County is requesting 2 projects be amended into the RTIP. One of the projects is already included in the RTIP. It's a TAP project. And the other one is the additional project is a new addition to the RTIP. The new project is for the Dungeness National Wildlife Refuge access improvements. And that's federal lands or a FLAP funded project. And then the project that's already included in the RTIP is for the ODT Olympic Discovery Trail, Forks, Kalawa River Park Trail improvement, and that's for an additional 825,000 SPP to help move that project along. So I'm graciously asking for your consideration to help Clallam County and the region deliver to project.
Okay, we will entertain a discussion or a motion. Lindsey, I bet you would be inclined to make a motion on that.
Boy, I was just thinking I should find that language that is in the packet, but I'm not on the right page.
You would like to move to amend the 2021-2026 Regional Transportation Improvement Program as requested by Clallam County.
Thank you. I do.
I'll second Ariel Spesser.
Thank you, Ariel. And Steve Gray is here. I'm sure that both he and Ed would be glad to answer any questions about either one of these projects. Is there any questions? Any discussion? Hearing none, we will go ahead and vote on the motion, which is to approve an amendment to the 2021 to 2026 Regional Transportation Improvement Program as requested by Clallam County. Is there anyone who would be inclined to vote no on this motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be inclined to vote no on the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved with unanimous consent. Thank you. And thank Clallam County for the good work they're doing on the ODT and the other projects in that area. We appreciate that a great deal. So we are 7 minutes ahead of time, but Mike is here. So Sarah, if he's prepared, we can go ahead and move forward with his presentation, and I will let you introduce him.
I will. It's really it's a pleasure to get to introduce you all to Mike Hewson with DKS. He's their electromobility manager and has been helping us on that small end of biennium services contract that you authorized in April. So we've been putting together some EV resources, working with you, your colleagues, your staff, and in the course of getting ready for today's briefing to you all, it came up in the conversation that there was a funding opportunity coming up that might be of interest to our members. And so you've seen some correspondence from me just in the last 24 hours or so about this. And Mike will sort of conclude his presentation today with some information on that. And I'm available afterwards to answer any questions if we don't have time to get to everything today. But with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike, to do your electric vehicle infrastructure 101 for the PRTPO board. And are you all set there with the screen share? You have your,
I think so. Hopefully
already?
this will work. Let's see. Good morning, folks.
It's coming up.
Okay, hopefully that's in presentation mode. Do you see the cover slide? Does that work okay?
Got it, Mike.
A few topics, but before I do, I just wanted to mention a resource that Thera and I are putting together, which is called the EV Readiness Resource for the Peninsula region, and the URL is on the left-hand side of this image. This is a great set of resources that we'll be populating over the next couple of weeks with more information, but it's a good thing, and hopefully this will serve as a clearinghouse for information that will be useful to all the members. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I think everybody should be on the same page with, so kind of we're all speaking the same language. So I'm going to cover the real basics of electromobility, talk about some of the benefits of electric vehicles themselves, talk about where we're headed, both with the vehicles and with the electromobility, which is a term that I use, basically vehicle electrification. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit deeper about this unique funding opportunity that we don't generally get here in Washington. I do a lot of work in California, and in California, they're awash with funds for charging infrastructure, which we don't yet have. We will once we have our low carbon fuel standard rules in place by the Department, I believe, of Ecology in a couple of years. But right now, money is scarce, and that's changing. So let's first talk about vehicles themselves. There's essentially 4 types of EVs, starting with hybrid vehicles. Think of the Prius, which came out of, I don't know, a little over, I'm not sure how long ago, about 20 years ago, I think. And then more recently, about a decade ago, plug-in hybrid vehicles came. And these basically, you can augment your battery by plugging in your vehicle. And then the battery electric vehicles, which have no way to, they don't have an engine at all. They just are plug-in vehicles. Think the Nissan Leaf or the Tesla Model 3 are 2 of the most common. And then another type that we don't see as many of, at least with light duty vehicles, are fuel cell electric vehicles. And I'm not going to be talking much about them because really the focus of today's presentation focuses on charging infrastructure. So there's 3 types of charging infrastructure. Level 1, which is using 120 volt wall outlet. Then there's level 2 charging, and that's basically all EVs come with a level 1 plug. But for workplace charging and other types of charging where you have less time available, you want to use a level 2 charging. And then DC fast charging is more used for public charging, and that's what the grant opportunity is about. So if you think about this as a pyramid, as a hierarchy, we really, the more from a capital perspective, the least cost is level 1 charging, the most cost is DC fast charging, and DC fast charging can get really fast, up to 350 kilowatts. But typically it's around 50 kilowatts. And then, of course, you're paying more for the benefit of that as well. And there's several different plug types out there as well. But I'm not going to get into the details on that. And then how are they used? Well, there's sort of the most common charging takes place at home. That is, most people that own an EV or operate an EV plug in their vehicle when it's not in use. Most vehicles are not used about 94% of the time, which gives ample time for charging. So home is the ideal place. Not everybody, of course, has a place to charge at home, and those who use EVs for commuting can hopefully charge them at the workplace. And so a lot of employers are adding charging infrastructure as an incentive to make that more viable as a commute option. And then opportunity charging is where you're charging along a public site, such as on the West Coast Electric Highway. Destination charging is where they're charging, say, at a stadium. And then, of course, a big part of charging is fleet charging. We do a lot of work with municipal fleets like the city of Seattle and King County Metro, and lots of other fleets to help them convert from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why that is in a couple of slides. How to find your charger? Well, the most common way to do this is using an app on your smartphone. And there are several different apps available. The most common, the one that aggregates all the data is called PlugShare. And this is an image of what the Olympic Peninsula looks like from PlugShare's perspective. And you can see the green are the level 2 chargers, the gold are the DC fast chargers, which means that if you're traveling, if you're a tourist and you're traveling around the Olympic Peninsula, you hope you're going to stay at a hotel that has a charger, because there's not a lot of public opportunity chargers where you can get a quick charge. The middle charge is what one of these apps looks like to show the status of one of these things, and then another app is on the far right. So different apps show different images, but in any case, there's an easy way to find out where your charging is going to be. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about why. Why are we doing this? Why are we changing out one type of vehicle that we've relied on steadily for over a century to a totally different technology? And there's a number of reasons. The first of which is, and this is the reason that local agencies, municipalities, and the federal government are doing it, is to reduce emissions. And it's not just for greenhouse gas emissions, and it depends on your power source. But if you have a clean power source, like where I'm based in Seattle, where we have Seattle City Light, and the vast majority of their power supply comes from hydro, which is a carbon-free power source, and many other power sources here in the state of Washington are carbon-free. But there's other emissions to be considered of as well, such as, all what the EPA regulates is the criteria air pollutants, the volatile organic compounds, carbon monoxide, and so forth. So if you live on a busy corridor, you would benefit by not having those kinds of emissions, regardless of the climate changes. And then the other issues to keep in mind, and this is what I think is going to be reasons that other people are going to switch, not just for the environmental benefits, but there's economic benefits. And the total cost of ownership today is lower for many electric vehicles, not necessarily the luxury electric vehicles, but Nissan Leaf and even a Tesla Model 3, depending on how much you're paying for electricity and gasoline. Here in Washington, gas is relatively expensive, electricity is relatively inexpensive. So even though it costs more to buy an electric vehicle today than it does to buy the ICE equivalent, over the course of, say, a decade, it's more cost effective to have an electric vehicle because of a couple of factors. The first of which is maintenance, and the second of which is fuel. And in some cases, you also get a higher trade-in value because there's a strong demand for these types of vehicles. So on an economic basis, and this is something that's really important to fleets, they're looking at it over the course of the life cycle of the vehicle, not what it costs to drive it off the lot. Electric vehicles are more economical to operate, and this is going to change even more in the next couple of years. And I'll talk about in some of the upcoming slides as to why that will be. And then something that I don't have an image for in the slide, but it's really important to know, and that is electric vehicles outperform internal combustion engine vehicles because they're more efficient. All of the energy and electricity goes to turn the wheels, whereas in gasoline and diesel power, most of the energy is used to generate heat, which is essentially a waste. And so you get more torque, it's quieter, it's a smoother ride, it performs better. And so most people who buy an electric vehicle don't go back to ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine, they stay with electric vehicles. So what's going to happen going forward? Well, depends on who you talk to and what data you're looking at. And again, going forward, it's not really data, it's projections. But if you look in the past, we've seen a lot of growth, both for battery electric vehicles as well as hybrid vehicles. I think going forward, we're going to see that battery electric vehicles are going to gain over hybrids, although depending again on who you talk to. But we should see steady growth, and that growth will come at the expense of sales of internal combustion engine vehicles. And in fact, many of the OEMs, the manufacturers of vehicles, are going away from gasoline-powered vehicles. Companies like Volkswagen and General Motors have pledged by 2030 and 2035. Volvo, I think theirs is 2025. Many of the different vehicle manufacturers are essentially closing down shop on their engine products and switching to all electric power plants. And it makes sense because if you can operate a vehicle that's better and costs less to operate, why wouldn't you? And so they know that that's where the market is headed. And so whether we like it or not, this is the direction that the industry is moving us forward. So let's talk about some of the trends that we're seeing and we'll be seeing more of and what that means for us. So right now, or as of last year, we have a pretty good sense as to what we have. Over the next couple of years, we can make some predictions based on what's been announced by the manufacturers of both the chargers and the vehicles. But beyond that, it gets a little fuzzy. So some of these, it's kind of hard to know. But one thing to keep in mind is that it's not just about transitioning from one fuel type to another. All of mobility is changing, and it's changing for a couple of other technologies as well. And one of those is autonomous technology. So in the next several years, I mean, it's happening today. They are currently designing vehicles that don't have steering wheels, they don't have brake pedals, they don't have gas pedals, they don't even have an accelerator pedal, period. You're not even facing forward. And so this image on the upper right is an Ollie. It's an autonomous transport vehicle. General Motors has a division that's dedicated to this. This is going to revolutionize transportation even more than switching from gasoline to electric vehicles, but these will be electric vehicles as well. So this is one of the drivers. Another driver is more shared mobility, and then urban aerial mobility is also developing. So a decade from now, transportation mobility is going to look very different than it is today. So it's important to keep this in mind in the context of the recommendations that we're seeing and some of the things that are forward in its planning. So in terms of the vehicles themselves, we're going to see a lot more choices. Right now, there's very limited number of electric vehicle products out there. Certainly in the affordable realm, there's very few, but that will be changing as well. One of the great things from a manufacturing perspective is modularity. And so with electric vehicles, they're basically the chassis is the energy storage system, which is the battery, and that's the most expensive part of an electric vehicle. And so if you're if you're a vehicle designer, this is basically what you're looking at is what they refer to, Rivian refers to as the skateboard, Volkswagen refers to as the MEB, and which is modular electric. I don't know what these stands for, but in any case, basically think of it as a battery with a frame around it that's attached to the wheels, and the motor of an electric vehicle is a tiny part of the total thing. Electric motors are far more efficient than internal combustion engines, so they don't need to be as big, which gives a lot of flexibility in the design. And as a result, we're seeing a lot of new form factors with vehicles. So on the light duty side, on the cars, we're seeing a number of different models that'll be coming out this year, next, and the following year, far more than we have today, because it takes about 4 years between the time you start designing and the time it's ready for production. And those have now been underway for about 3 years. We're seeing more SUVs. Nissan's coming out with one. Ford earlier this year came out with the Mach-E. Mustang and Nissan and VW as well. Hyundai, lots of other vehicles as well. And then of course, pickup trucks. The most recent announcement and probably the most exciting announcement is the Ford F-150 Lightning, which was announced 2 to 3 weeks ago. And I'll talk a little bit about that more. And then it's not just on the light duty side, but it's also on the heavy duty side. So there's essentially all 8 classes of vehicles using the U.S. Department of Transportation classification system, class 1 through 8, and I just showed you the class 1 vehicles, but vans, light duty trucks, even all the way up to heavy duty trucks are all going to be available at production scale in the next several years. And this is really important for fleets as well as for individuals. As I mentioned, I think the most exciting announcement in the last couple of weeks has been announcement of the F-150 Lightning. For a couple of reasons. First of all, and these are things that surprise me, and I'm someone who tracks this quite a bit, and that is that it's going to be cost competitive with a gas equivalent. The base model price is going to be, supposedly going to be $40,000, but here in Washington, where you have a $2,500 state tax credit and a $7,500 federal tax credit. That brings it down 10,000, which means you can buy one of these things for $30,000. That's an all-wheel drive model. So that's going to be less expensive than its gas equivalent, which that to me is a game changer. Electric vehicles, as I mentioned, perform better. They have more torque. That's really important for a truck. It can carry more weight and it can haul a bigger trailer and it can get off the line quicker. It also has features that an internal combustion engine can't have, such as mobile power. It functions like a generator to run your power tools. Where the engine would be is all secure storage with where you can plug things in. It has an onboard charger and it has bidirectional capability, and it's going to be available next year, which is going to drive a lot of demand because, again, this is the most popular vehicle in the United States. Another trend is battery prices are coming down. Again, batteries are the most expensive single component in electric vehicles. So lowering the price of energy storage is going to lower the price of the vehicle, which is going to make them cost competitive and probably outcompete internal combustion engine vehicles within the next year or two. And before we thought it was going to happen, by the mid 2020s, now it's going to be in the early 2020s. That's going to be a game changer. And there's a lot of technology that's going to make that even less expensive going forward, such as solid state batteries, such as lithium metal chemistry and so forth. We're also going to see automated charging, both inductive charging and robotic charging. And so that means that we'll be being ready for when vehicles themselves are autonomous. So it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for humans to be charging the vehicles when they're not even driving the vehicles, right? And then, of course, bidirectional power. And this is something that means that you'll be able to sell power back to the grid or use it to power your home. And this was something that we thought was going to happen by the mid 2020s. And amazingly enough, the F150 Lightning that I just mentioned will have this capability. So this is not science fiction. This is going to happen as of next year. And so that's a big game changer. If you can generate revenue from the grid services from your vehicle, that's going to make a big difference. So as Sarah mentioned earlier, there's an opportunity that I want to talk about next. And this is something that will be happening this summer. And what it is the state of Washington Department of Transportation has this program to finance, build, operate, and maintain DC fast charging along key corridors in the state of Washington. And one of those corridors identified in the program is US 101, which is the main street of PRTPO, right? So really important opportunity. I know that you've applied already for 2 different grants unsuccessfully, but maybe the 3rd time's the charm. It's going to be about $8 million, and the hope is that it will be used to generate private investment, about a 50% match. So there's some opportunities, and there's a number of charging companies that I know that are excited to get involved in this. And this is a great opportunity for site hosts. There's a number of different site requirements that I'm not going to cover, but I think all of these are manageable. And it's eligible for who is eligible? Well, nonprofit organizations, local government agencies, and of course, tribes. And with a number of different agencies as members of this organization, as well as tribes, I think this is a really great opportunity that you should consider. The grant, they don't have the exact schedule, but it'll be happening sometime this summer. And here's a slide that shows where more information is available. There's the top one is the website, and Sarah will have this on as well. You can get, send an email to partnerships@washdot.wa.gov if you want to get on the announcement list. WashDOT will be hosting a dedicated workshop on this topic sometime in the next several weeks. I'm not exactly sure when. They haven't announced when that'll be, but this will get you on that list. And then Thera has organized a meeting next Wednesday from 10 to noon. That's Wednesday the 23rd. And to talk to a representative from WashDOT, who will be there as well. I'll be there. And to see if there's interest among the membership to find out more. And that, I think, is the end of my slides. So I think I kept that to 20 minutes as I was asked to do. And now I have time to answer questions.
Yes, if anyone has questions or comments, if you'd raise your hand, then I can see you better on my screen and call on you. If not, just ask away. I'm sure some of our public works folks and transportation transportation staff members will probably have questions in addition to the electeds.
And Beck, if I could pipe in here,
Please.
we will make Mike's slides and presentation available. So, and I'll hopefully have that up in just the next couple of days. And I'll send that information out to everybody. And that link that he talked about on the, to see the grant page on WSDOT's site, you can actually get to that from our website on that EV resources page. We have it listed there. And I want to be really clear with everybody that PRTPO is not itself is not going to, is not in a position to go pursue a project, but we can, we're offering this in the way of information sharing and to provide resources to our members and hopefully help them make connections with other like interest at this point.
Mr. Cardwell.
Why, thank you. I want to bring to the attention of the group that tribes are probably in a unique situation to provide these types of services. I mean, A, we've got some working capital. B, we've got some places that are easily accessible. And C, we certainly want to have customers. I mean, we want to diversify our customer base and certainly encourage people to come to our properties and charge and pay for it on the casino floor. So again, that has been brought up numerous times previously. But for example, the Quinault, I mean, we are developing a Q-Mart C-store, and we're penciling in the charging at that location. The problem has been we're out here on the coast and everything kind of stops in Aberdeen. And I'm guessing there are other missing links around the peninsula as well. But again, this is really an opportunity to bring the tribes into the mix and as such. And I look forward to the NOFA, as I'm sure that the Quinault Nation, as well as others, will be applying. And I think it's ideal for us to promote this as not only save the environment, but again, as mentioned, reducing costs and everything.
Thank you. I know that I want to express appreciation to Mike Hewson for being available to hold this workshop for the RPTO membership. I think it will be very useful, give them insights on a good way, a good plan to present a project for consideration. Yeah, I looked at the map that Mike had up earlier with 101. It looked like it was 101 in a section of 3. I didn't see Highway 16 on it. Anyway, that's just from my Kitsap point of view that I was looking at. Lindsey?
Yeah, I just want to encourage pushing this information out in the business communities where folks who potentially would be applying directly would more likely be able to see it than in the transit space. So like Kalawa EDC and the city chambers of commerces and stuff like that, I think that would be valuable to get this info out. A lot of this seems like targeting specific locations in rural areas. So, between Port Angeles and Forks, there's maybe 5 to a dozen places where it would make sense to have a charging station along Highway 101. And we can specifically make sure that the folks who own those businesses or those trailheads or whatever they are know that this is an opportunity coming up.
Thank you. That's an excellent idea. Thera, can we make sure, or how we can talk offline the best way to reach, do outreach.
And in fact, if I could, I sent out an email. You all may not have even had time to see it yet. I sent out an email late yesterday afternoon about this meeting next week. And I encourage you, please, you have contacts that I just don't have. And so if you would forward that to any of the, if you know somebody, or if you can tell me who I should reach out to. I have put out a feeler to the Visitor Bureau, the Olympic Peninsula Visitor Bureau, but I really don't have any contacts there or with the chambers. So I did, please consider forwarding that or letting me know who I could reach out to, and I would love to do that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Mike? See, oh, Ed Stern, are you talking to us, or are you just talking and waving your hands? I think he's just talking and waving his hands. Steve, please. Can't hear you.
He's not muted.
Yeah, no, I know he's not muted. That's
Shoot.
Marty, do you want to have a comment?
Yes, I would just like to thank Mike for all that great information. It's really good to know. I appreciate it, the time.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe Steve can try again. I did a little trick. Maybe that'll help.
Okay, did Ed do magic, Steve? No.
Tried.
Steve, if you want, you could put something in the chat and perhaps we could read it if you could condense it.
I will add while he's doing that we will be coming back to the board over your next meeting or two, bringing to you what we think are logical based on what we're finding from our initial information sweep and whatever comes out of this work session next week. And we have a poll out on the streets right now just to get a sense of the readiness, how agencies, organizations, or members feel about how ready they are. We'll be coming back to you with ideas, work program ideas for what PRTPO can do to support the efforts that are underway and help catalyze opportunities for our members. So all of this is feedback or input to that process.
Maybe Steve, did you try? Okay, we'll go to Michael, and then maybe Steve took his audio or his visual off. Maybe he'll be able to have audio.
Yeah, I was just curious if anybody has been reaching out to the various power agencies like Puget Sound Energy to have kind of a mapping of where sufficient power might already be available without having to bring it in. And I remember seeing in the slide that you need three-phase power, which isn't obviously everywhere.
I would encourage engaging them as part of any application because power access is really, really important. And it's at the site scale level that's really important too. It's not just sort of where the grid has capacity, it's at the site scale.
Yeah. So, I mean, nobody's been doing that yet. That's going to be up to us then, it sounds like.
Yeah, Tammy? Okay, Tammy, you're still on mute.
Okay, let's try this again. I'm wondering about the money, the grant funding opportunity. Is this federal funding?
State funding.
Oh, okay. I noticed BYD was on there, on that list, so. Okay, interesting. I think it'll be an interesting meeting. Thank you.
Steve, are you going to try again, Steve Gray? Okay, I guess not. Any other questions or comments? Nope. Okay, then Sarah, is our next presenter here, or do we want to quickly do the Title VI draft plan or the legislative update? Do we want to
slide in the Title VI real
Okay.
quick? I was just looking down. I gave them a heads up that we might get them on a little early, but I don't see.
And I want, where did Mike go on my screen? I just wanted to express great appreciation to him for the work he's doing for us, the limited time we've allowed him to do it, the quality of his product, and the presentation he gave us. Very, very grateful for that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to present, and I look forward to hopefully helping folks out with an application, because I think it's a unique opportunity. It's so rare to see funding in the state of Washington. It's really great.
Yeah.
The opportunity.
Yeah, hopefully we can get some success for our jurisdictions. That would be wonderful. And for our other partners within the jurisdictions. Okay, Sarah, you want to quickly do Title VI?
Sure. Thank you. And thank you, Mike. I'll circle back with you. And Title VI this is one of those, we're still wrapping up some of the last of the transition things from when WSDOT to now. And actually, I'm going to stop, Beck, since I'm just starting, because Russ is here. And so let's, my stuff can wait.
Yeah, because I know he has a hard,
right, he's got a hard leave
at the end. So Sarah, I will let you introduce Russ. I will let our group know that this is a discussion on broadband.
It is, and thank you, Russ, for the notice that we were a little bit ahead of schedule for you here. Russ Elliott is, he heads up the new broadband office for Department of Commerce. The board, you all have made broadband a real priority for the last year and a half. And Russ, I heard a presentation that he gave about a month or so ago, and I thought you all need to hear this. There's a lot of work out there happening, and this is just a great time for this to be a priority for you. So with that, Russ, I'm going to turn it over to you. You should have total screen share capacity on your end, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much for making time to meet with us today.
Well, gosh, thank you, Sarah, and I appreciate that. Now you go relax a little bit, go have a soda or something. I'll go for the next few minutes, and we'll let everybody have a break. But fantastic to see everybody here. What a great time to be talking about broadband. What a great group of people to be getting together talking about broadband. I've seen tremendous energy from Kitsap, from Mason, now Jefferson and Fallon. All these communities really coming together and doing some fantastic work in the broadband space. So this may just be a reiteration of some of the things that were already going on, but you know, it'll also help us spark some more of those conversations that need to be had at a time where it is very critical to be having these conversations. We've never seen more energy around this topic. We've never seen more money coming down to this topic. So it's exciting to be here. Again, I'm Russ Elliott. I'm the director of the Washington State Broadband Office. So again, just happy to be here. And I'm going to run you through a quick dog and pony there. You've probably seen it, so you can take a nap. But the rest of you guys, you know, that haven't seen it, let's run through what the broadband office is doing and why that's important right now for all of us, and how we're trying to make certain we're centralizing the conversation across this state. So let me see. Just give me a head nod if that looks like it's a screen share success. All right, fantastic, good. Well, thank you all for letting me be here. Broadband office, we're here. We were founded in 2019, as you all know. Legislation stood us up, put a little money aside for some capital, and set some standards for the state. So as a result of that, it set up this office and set up my role. I was brought back here in late 2019. Been here about a year and a half. And the state broadband office, I'm proud to say, has been operating out of the basement of my house in Shelton, Washington. So there you have it. That's the state broadband office. It's been primarily here in this community. So a little rural here in Mason County, but proud to say the broadband office is representing from this region. So here we are. You know, the broadband office, I'm appointed by the governor, so I sit underneath the governor, but I also sit with Commerce, and they do a lot of the support for this office. We were an office of 1.5 for the last year and a half since inception, basically. We had about $250,000 budget, and we're the dog that caught the bus this last session. We went out and told a story. People believe that broadband is more critical than ever. And as a result, they threw money at me. And we've got a few $100 million. We've got, to be exact, around $350 million to spend on broadband. Some of that for matching funds, some of that for capital grant projects and those kind of things. So we're excited about the opportunity to finally have some influence in this space. Commerce, as you know, really as the support mechanism for us, and we're excited to be with the support of Commerce. And this is the Commerce commercial at the front of my show. Here's the challenge, and I think you all know this. Over here on the left-hand side, you know, big broadband, lots of providers, lots of return on investment, lots of people, right? There's a lot of things going on over there. So we have tremendous amount of activity, a tremendous amount of options and pricing and services. That's happening as long as we've got good demand. As demand wanes and population wanes, so does the interest from the providers, and so does that return on investment, that opportunity to make a little bit of money, right? And as that starts to wane, and it happens fast, you know, it's not just downtown Seattle and then all of a sudden you got to get all the way out into deep east Snohomish County. This is I-5, and about 2 miles off I-5 is where you start to get in this beige area right here. And when you get into that area, it starts to become less attractive because it's a little bit more expensive to build, less adoption out there, and a little bit more of a challenge for return on investment. And so hence the competition goes away. You start to see single types of providers. Then there's a point really where we start to get out in more rural areas. And again, that's not very far out of that suburban area, but these areas out where it really is very costly, you know, it's very costly to build, and there's less demand out there. So there's less opportunity for adoption, less opportunity for revenue. And really this becomes a challenge because it's very expensive to put infrastructure in the ground. So as we're talking about regional transportation, which I love this conversation, as you're digging up roads, as you're putting in bridges, as you're doing the things that you do around your transportation efforts, think communications as well. Think about, if I put a bridge over some water, I've got a piece of conduit in that bad boy so that people can come in post bridge and run some fiber through that. 90% of the cost of doing broadband is putting a plow in the ground or putting string up on the poles, right? So if we can get past that with some economies of scale and scope, what a fantastic time we can have. And that was embraced by the legislation this year also with 1457, where they talked about Department of Transportation, broadband office, let's work together, let's centralize the conversation, let's coordinate a little bit. We've got projects out there 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 6 years. Let's make certain we're letting everybody know where we're going, what's going on. And maybe providers are coming in. Maybe now with the new municipal efforts and the new public networks that are going on that passed in this last session, maybe it's a municipal play. Maybe it's one of the public utility districts. Who is it? Who knows? But what we have to do is make certain we're coordinating that conversation and not participating in our silos, because this is a challenge. It doesn't matter. I don't care if it's public infrastructure. I don't care if it's private infrastructure. I don't care what it is. This is a challenge. And this is the delicate conversation this office is trying to lead this state right now. How do we get this area taken care of? Along with, you'll see some digital equity stuff where we talk about affordability. It's not, you know, it's not enough to just build it. People have to be able to afford it too. Here's our strategy as a broadband office. We really believe that broadband now is a community up discussion. It's been led by providers for decades. Providers have done what they can. They've built infrastructure where they feel there's that return on investment. They're at a point now where they're looking for support. They're trying to figure out how to make that happen. And you know what? In Washington State, we've been pretty lucky. We've had good providers. We rank in the top 3 in the country for connectivity. It's because we have good private investment. So we can't just throw that away. We have to honor that, along with honoring the opportunity for us to now bring some of that public infrastructure and public investment to this conversation. So we have to start at the local level. We have to start with the community, the partner, the planning, the stakeholdering. And that's where we embrace as a state these broadband action teams. We see these regional teams all over, and I'm certain many of you in here are familiar with the ones that are going on. We got them up in Jefferson, got them in Clallam. We've got one trying to form here in Mason. We've got them all over the state. As a matter of fact, we're up over 32 now. So we've got these local communities coming together, and they're bringing providers to the conversation, public infrastructure to the conversation. They're bringing anchor institutions, medical facilities, schools, the people that are going to make the big difference in how we're going to do this, economic developers and the citizens. Bring them all together, start to have a hearty conversation, start to be able to talk more intelligently about what it is you need. We get too many people out there saying, we need more money for broadband. Well, what are you going to do with it, right? We need to identify exactly what we're going to do with it. And now's the time, because we're getting a lot of money coming down the pipe. We want to be able to say, here's what we want to spend our money on. Here are the areas we have identified that are challenging, for this state. So after we get the partnering, we start the planning. Once everybody's together, we start talking about what's the plan look like? Where are those gaps in our counties? The broadband office has stood up a new mapping tool that's pretty compelling, allows us to break down this state by county, by legislative district, by tribal region, whatever it is. We can look at it. People have given us speed test results. We can talk intelligently about the type of technology that's there. We can talk about the providers that are there. We can talk about the holes that need to be filled. We can also talk about where federal money's already spent. A lot of the money coming down the pipe will not double spend. It's not going to spend on top of additional or existing federal infrastructure committed areas. So we have to be ready to look at that and say, oh, there's already money spent here. How can we enhance that fund and maybe bring these two areas together and fill in this blank right here? That's a good spend of our money because we're really taking advantage of identifying, where those gaps are and where those projects could be. So planning, partnering, planning, then we go chase the funds, right? We've always been an office that's dedicated on trying to go out and get as much of the federal money as possible. Before we knew COVID money was coming, this was our mantra. We were going to go chase federal money. We're going to go get USDA. We're going to go get EDA. We're going to go with FCC. We're going to go chase money, NTIA, Treasury money now. So we're going to go get money. We're going to try to maximize funds. What we want to do is maximize those federal dollars along with a lot of the state dollars that we have and really get a good return on those monies that we have here locally. So we're going to be chasing money. No project goes unconsidered. I don't want to play this game of competitive projects and who can beat who, or who knows how to write a grant better than the next guy, or who didn't cross a T or dot an I or get a letter of support in, you're automatically out. I think that's a dangerous game to play when you're talking about these rural communities that need support. We need to be more nurturing and collaborative in our approach. So this office will support that. We're going to support that every project that comes in here, we have to consider it. Now, do we consider it with state funds? Do we consider it with federal money? Do we go out to the bond market? What are we going to do for it? But we're going to figure those things out, and we're going to continue to embrace all that come in and see what we can make certain we do that. We have to build networks that are future-proof, scalable, and sustainable. I can't say this loud enough. And currently I am at the federal level, really making a lot of noise about this. I'm very passionate about the fact that we are getting ready to spend my 6-year-old's future money. And he will be paying this back in 15 to 20 years. And when he's paying it back, he best be singing our praises about the beautiful infrastructure we put in that he's able to use and scale when he's sitting there trying to pay his bills through the bank and connect with his job or connect with the healthcare or education. This infrastructure better be there, and it better be solid and scalable. We better not be selfish with this money and build crummy infrastructure that's only going to last 5 to 10 years. We're done with that. We've been doing that as a country for the last 2 decades. We've built infrastructure that just gets us by. Then all of a sudden, at the end of that funding cycle, we realize, wow, that's out of date. We can't use that anymore. We need to lift in place. It's just bad policy. The policy now needs to be future-proof, scalable infrastructure. And people will push back and they'll say, boy, that's just expensive. Well, I contend we have to reevaluate what's expensive. When the federal government is talking about B's and T's coming out to our states and out to this nation, what is expensive? I think we have one time to get this right, and the time is now. So we're really going to embrace that philosophy, and we're going to go chase this, and we're going to make certain that we're building this sustainable, future-proof infrastructure networks. Then finally, and probably most importantly, especially through the pandemic, we've realized that digital equity and inclusion is such a critical component. I've always been this Navy SEAL for connectivity. I grab the fiber, I run it up the beach, I plug it in, I run back and go find a new place to put in fiber. But what we've realized very quickly is there's a need that once you plug that fiber in, can those folks afford it? Can they adopt it? Do they have the tools to use it? Do they have the skills to use it? It's as critical as getting it to them. So we are embracing this idea that digital equity and inclusion is basically the lighthouse light on everything we do to ensure that we embrace that. And again, that's at the community level, right? That's why this falls into this partner strategy, because what's right for Yakima County and migrant farm workers is different than what's right for downtown King County and our urban regions, right? And we have to build programs and plans that are customized to our unique needs in our regions. So again, we embrace this community up for connectivity, construction, and digital equity and inclusion, right? So this is kind of our model. We kind of built everything around this. Talked about broadband action teams. When I got into this office, we had about 10. Again, I always need to say that broadband action teams were an idea that came from Washington State University and their extension. We adopted that and we've taken that to the next level. As a state, we've come to an agreement with WSU to embrace that. And we've gone from there was about 9, 10 teams when I came into the state. We've got now 32, and they are all very, very active. And they're very much working toward identifying those shovel-ready projects, bringing communities together, bringing the anchor institutions in to have the conversation. Do not let your small rural communities let their anchor institutions go to a provider without that provider committing to serving citizens around that anchor institution. That ship sailed. Providers have made a living out of coming in and grabbing those anchor institutions and getting the hell out of town and not taking care of the citizens. And what did we just have? We had a pandemic where all our schools were well connected, but empty. And all our students were sitting at home going, how do I connect? What do I got to do? Those bills kept getting paid. Those providers made good money over the last year and a half. And the schools were basically empty. And we had kids that were struggling to get connected. We need to rethink our strategies. If we're going to hand out any kind of state money, any kind of federal money to a good solid anchor program, let's make certain that those anchors are tied to a plan to build around. Let's make certain we're doing that. That's a good planning, regional planning thought, right? Let's put that in our toolbox as we start to talk about what are we going to do for regional planning. Anyway, a lot of public-private partnership stuff. People say private's the right way. People say public's the right way. They're both wrong, right? There is something here that comes together that will solve this problem, right? Hey, if private providers agree to buy 100% or commit to 100% of infrastructure built to every citizen in the state without taxpayer dollars, bring affordable infrastructure that's scalable, future-proof, and has a income-based plan attached to it, we're out. I'm not working anymore. We're good, but that's not going to happen. We need to make certain we're 100% equitable in our pursuit for getting people connectivity. Public providers aren't going to be able to build infrastructure, maintain them, and operate them like they're telco companies. Just doesn't make sense. There's too many of these that have gone south, and then those networks end up getting absorbed by the private providers for pennies on the dollar. We have to be smart. Somewhere in the middle is the play, and we're doing that delicate dance right now in this office. We are talking with public and privates together, having very unique conversations, and hopefully we'll get some magic sauce that we'll be able to sprinkle on this and really start to do some good work. I'm feeling very confident that we've got some good initial programs underway. These bats really help us identify those shovel-ready projects and look for those funding opportunities is what they do. So if you're not, get active in one of these broadband action teams. They're very forward-thinking and they're very good partners to be engaged with. One of the things I did immediately when I got to the state is, I think we have to quantify things, and you'll see my last slide says what gets measured gets done. I believe that 100%. I think it's still that from Henny Ford, but I believe that 100%. We can't sit back and say I've got crappy broadband because I can't quantify that, right? What I have to do is quantify the fact that if you don't feel like your broadband is adequate, you go home and you do a speed test and you give me that information so that I can now quantify what you have. Oh, crummy or bad broadband in your neighborhood is 5 megabits download by less than 1 megabit upload. You're right. You have poor broadband. I can now speak intelligently about what you have. I know who your provider is. I know how much you're paying for it. I know what your technology is, and I know what we got to do to fix it, right? So now we have to have those conversations. Do I bring a private in to make certain we can start building that future-proof scalable infrastructure in the neighborhood? Do we look at a public infrastructure to do that, where we can build and then allow for privates to compete on it? Do we let publics come in and build it and do it themselves? All sorts of opportunities here, but we have to start with the right question and we have to start with the right problem so that we can answer it with the right tools. So the map is here, broadband.wa.gov. If anybody says, I hate my broadband is poor, you tell them you got homework. You go home, go to broadband.wa.gov, take a speed test, make certain your voice is heard. You hear communities all the time going, wow, our neighborhood is just terrible. Well, you know what? I've empowered those communities now to have a voice in this conversation. And those communities now are being very active. And it's very compelling when you drill down on these areas. And you can see a community came in with a tremendous amount of speed tests. And I can now say, wow, this is a community I need to solve a problem for. This is not a one-off. Now, this is not somebody with a bad wireless router, right? An internal network. This is an actual community that has infrastructure that's inferior. And what are we going to do to fix it? Think of blackout bingo for those of you that play bingo. I used to have the daubers and I'd have bags and I used to play back in the old days, that kind of stuff. So think about that. And the state is our bingo card. I want to start to look at blacking out the state with regard to getting areas covered. So green is good. We'll call it green out bingo, I guess, instead of blackout bingo. We want to turn the whole state green is what we want to do. So we want to really build that infrastructure, build those networks where we start to see results. So broadband.wa.gov, please. Our map allows me to look at layers, right? So this is the other thing I can do on the back end. This is fiber. See that blue stuff there? Fiber. So you see areas where there's red, a lot of red, yellow, black, bad, right? But I see, all of a sudden I see some blue fiber in these areas. So I can go now to those companies and say, hey, I see you have some fiber infrastructure nearby. What would it take for you to extend to a little neighborhood? You can see this big red ball out here, right? What would it take for this fiber, whoever owns this fiber, don't know who it is right now, I'm not looking at it, or this fiber here that went through here. What do I have to do to get that fiber extended up in there so that we can get some scalable infrastructure? Who is it? Are you private? Are you public? Who are you? Let's come to the table. Let's start having some creative conversation. And if they say, we just can't afford it, I say, yeah, you can. You need to come talk to me now because we got billions and trillions, right? We got money coming. So let's not think we can't afford it anymore. That's not an excuse. We're removing all the excuses, right? We've identified the barriers. The barriers are, I don't have the skills to figure out what to do. I don't have the matching funds to meet it. I don't have the grant writer to write it. This office is replacing all, we're putting a metric in for all of those things. So if you have any problems, we've got the tools now. We're bringing those tools. So we've removed the barriers and we're trying to make things work for everybody. So this is how we do this. And this is what we do on the back end. And this is how we start to solve problems in areas. Shovel-ready projects, already kind of talked about that, where we have to plan, we have to demonstrate unserved, we have to look at that. Right now, a lot of people focused on that 25.3 number, 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up is unserved. We're pushing hard to change that. We've got goals that are pretty unique in this state. As a matter of fact, we have the most aggressive goal in the country. I'm proud of that. Wasn't my idea. I just get to be the steward of it. 150 megabits symmetrical. That means we're going to have 150 megabits down and 150 megabits up. Shooting for 2028. Moonshot goal, no question. Moonshot goal. But I'd rather be shooting for something like that than trying to shoot for something that when we get there, hey, we need to start over again because we didn't quite get there. When this legislation was first stood up, and I think there's a slide that's coming up, I'll show you a little bit more about that, but there was some lack of thought around consistency of how we're going to get to 150 symmetrical. We're changing that dynamic. We're going straight at it. So you're going to start to see unserved being defined more in the 100 megabit. So now all of a sudden it really opens the state up for conversation. So you'll start to see some of that. Try to find those committed partners. We're looking at everybody. Like I said, you're looking at publics, you're looking at privates, you're looking at municipalities, whatever you can to get things going and start to talk about what those partnerships are like. We're starting to put plans together, costs, making certain that we've got all the things that needed to put together a good project for consideration. We have to remember right now, this is a planning group. So you guys all are familiar with, there's a lot of things when you're planning, we got to build a strategic plan. We got to do this and that, but you also have to remember, you got to get materials, right? You got to have a materials list. And I think we're all very aware of what's going on right now. We're going to have a tremendous shortage of materials, especially in the broadband space. Conduit, electronics, glass, fiber, right? That's already a year out. I've got these ARPA funds. I got to spend them by 12 of 24. All of a sudden our window's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We think we got all this time, right? But we've got these real tight constraints that are going to be happening around those funds. So it's imperative that we get together and start moving on these projects right now. Right-of-way stuff is critical. Permits are critical. Those kind of things we have to be talking collaboratively. We have to be thinking unselfishly about trying to solve the problem for the citizens of the state. Not how do I make a couple extra bucks, right? How do I solve the problem for the citizens of the state? Classic challenge, right? Small communities looking at it going, hey, right of way, I can make a bunch of money here, right? What that does is it just makes people walk away from that problem and just say, you know what, I don't have time to do that. I've got other areas I want to look at. They're going to be more lucrative for me or less onerous for me to get into. So thinking about that as we're doing. Funds, I've talked about it. I don't need to go here much more. I mean, there's so much money out there right now. NTIA's is right now with an open funding cycle for this rural grants, for broadband grants. Also, NTIA's opened $1 billion fund for tribal broadband grants. Those are both open right now. We're working as a state to try to centralize that. NTIA does a great job of looking to states to say, look, start to centralize this so we don't have these isolated silo issues going on. People working in different camps and all this kind of stuff. Work as a state, work as a cohesive unit to solve the problem. That's the only way it's going to get done. So NTIA looks to us to guide that. You'll see an RFI come out from this office here in the next week or so to where we're announcing, hey, bring your projects because we're going to pick the best ones based on what the NTIA is looking for in their NOFO. So if you're interested in that, go to the NTIA website. There's a NOFO out right now that talks about, you know, what qualifies and how does that work. Looking for serving unserved, and they're looking at a lot of last mile. So we want to hook up the citizens now, right? It's not about anchor institutions, a little bit of middle mile, but more just trying to hook up those people that are still desperate to get. So you'll see that. You'll see, you know, obviously the ARPA money's out there. There's another big capital budget being discussed right now, whether it's the Bridge Act or Clyburn's Act on the congressional level. It's going to bring capital funds to broadband infrastructure to the tune of very significant numbers, right? It's kind of going down because we're having some big lobby wrestling with the feds, and it bums me out because they're fighting about the wrong problem, right? They're not fighting about how do we solve the problem for the people. They're fighting about how do we protect our interests and our networks and our things. They're not talking about the right problem. So a little bummed out about that because we're seeing some of that money get chipped away already because they're trying to come to more of a consensus. So anyway, you'll see that USDA is going to pop here pretty soon. They'll have, you know, $750 million out for funding. FCC will be doing a bunch of funding. There's all sorts of just different funds out there right now. So just trying to keep an eye on it along with our state programs. My office got some money. PWB's got some money. CURB's got some money. We're all got money around broadband. We're trying to centralize that here locally as well in the state. This is the thing I was talking about. So the goal that was set up in the original legislation says, hey, 25.3 to everybody by 2024, and then 150 symmetrical by 2028. Well, 25.3 actually is legacy infrastructure. So if we're pushing for 25.3 by 2024, we're actually doing a disservice to our ability to go and get that more aggressive goal in 2028. So I've kind of forgetting about that 25.3 thing, and I'm really focused on trying to build that future-proof infrastructure. And we're really working to try to make it out that way. Now, that doesn't mean we let people go stranded because they don't have a solution that's 150 symmetrical. It just means we're really trying to make people have a more compelling conversation around how we're going to build infrastructure. We will stay technologically agnostic. This office is set up with emerging technologies. We've run some of the most compelling programs in the country. You know, SpaceX was first launched here in the state. We did the first proof of concept for them, which wound up making them capable and qualify for their Rural Development Opportunity Fund. At the federal level, they were able to go chase $1 billion because they proved concept with the Hoh tribe out in Jefferson County, right? We went out there, we hooked up every tribal member from no connectivity to 100 megs overnight. And it was a compelling technology. It's good technology. Now, I'd still like to see them get some physical infrastructure. I'd like to see the investment in the ground in Washington State. But that is something when we need something, if there's nothing else that's available at the time. So we'll continue to look at those emerging technologies. And you know about digital equity inclusion, we've already talked about it. So, you know, it's not just having the access to, it's the affordability component of it. It's the skills training, and it's the tools, having the tools. And that's all those things came to a head during this pandemic. And really we're starting to run with that. You're seeing a lot of legislative efforts around what are we going to do around affordability. Currently the feds, and I think this is very important to reiterate, at the FCC, they've launched this emergency broadband benefit, which is a subsidy for those that can show income-based need. They are able to receive a $50 a month stipend, or 1973 wants their stipend back, whatever. They get a subsidy for their monthly bills, $50, and if they're on tribal land, they get $75 for the monthly bills. So, in my opinion, fantastic program, solved by the right people. Take it at the federal level, solve it at the federal level. Quit making us states hammer at our little tiny budgets to try to figure out how to solve this for the many people that need it, that it's critical for. I'm begging the feds to maintain the consistency of this program after the funding runs out. I'd like them to really consider some sustainable program around this benefit. There's been a lifeline benefit like $9 or something like that, but again, built on the 96 Telecom Act. That's so 10 years, 20, 30 years ago, whatever that is. You know, it's time that we bring everything up to today, talk about 2021 and forward, and get a benefit, get a subsidy in place so that people can have the digital type technologies they need to serve in this day and age. So we'll be playing in that space. This is how we measure. You know, we look at our map. You give me an area. This is Snohomish County. I have a little air park up there that was struggling, and they came and they demonstrated significant lead. I was able to go out and advocate for them. We had some public folks coming, we had some private folks coming. They talked about owning it themselves. In the end, I had a private provider come in and step up and say, we'll build it all on our own dime. So this is the way we measure success. You go from having very poor connectivity to actually being very well connected, all green dots. That's success. That's what we're going to do. Again, green out bingo, I guess. I'm changing it now. It's not going to be blackout. It's going to be green out bingo. I've already said this, please, broadband.wa.gov. If you got that, if you got, the opportunity, you got communities that say we're struggling, get them to get me some information so that I can talk about it, champion for them. And this also helps you as counties and as regional planning groups to sit down and look at this and say, okay, where do we have gaps in service? Where are there already federal funds? How do we find areas that we can go chase to get shovel-ready money? How do we take advantage of this federal money? This is how we do it. We really take advantage of this mapping initiative we have. So I think that's it. There, you've seen that. I've already said that too. So that's me. I appreciate the time and happy to take some questions, thoughts, and whatever else if that's appropriate now.
Lindsey?
Hi, Russ. You're speaking to a bunch of different kinds of local governments, counties, cities, ports, tribes, transit agencies. What do you see as the appropriate role of each different kind of local government in the work you're doing around broadband?
The biggest thing you guys can do, Lindsey, is be part of the planning, be part of the coordinating the conversation. That's what needs to happen right now. And in that conversation, it needs to be, do you have assets? Do you have right-of-way capabilities? What are the things that you do have as a local government that you can contribute to making that problem go away or making that problem easier to solve? I believe it's more in the role of coordinating, centralizing, and collaborating.
Sorry, that's kind of a generic answer. We're already doing that. I mean, like specifically, telecommute, like the electric, the PUDs and, those who run electric, what's their role relative to, the economic development, local governments relative to the county?
Well, Lindsey, I'm sorry you thought that was a generic answer. I'm going to tell you right now that the PUDs are already engaged. Talk to Mason 3, talk to Kitsap. They're doing great work. It's old news. They're going to continue to do that good work, and we'll continue to support them. So that's what I see needs to happen there. And if we have municipalities that want to get in the game, feel free. We've got Anacortes up there running a municipal network that's closed network. It's not open access. It's closed. So the sky's the limit. I think it's just a matter of coming to the table with some creative thought and getting ready to start to solve the problem. I mean, Kitsap is doing a great job with their local utility districts. I embrace that. What else can we do? What other things can we do to solve the problem? Do we have all the answers? No, we don't. If we did, it would be already solved. I work with other states right now that everybody's going through this. Okay, how do we solve this problem? Many states don't have the public infrastructure component. So we actually have an extra tool in our toolbox to leverage. We've got to get creative with it because it's not something that's nationally embraced yet. So we have to get creative and try to come to the table with some answers. So sorry if I'm sounding generic, but I'm certainly feeling like we just need to try to centralize this conversation, get more pointed to bringing those shovel-ready opportunities to the table. What shovel-ready projects are out there that we can start to look at and get done?
Mr. Stern?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Russ, excellent presentation. Really appreciate your enthusiasm on the subject too.
Thank you, Ed.
I have a question, but I want to predecess it by saying I wince when I hear you say a 12/24 deadline, not that you control it, because the flood of money, not only here, but nationwide, there's going to be a supply chain problem like you can't believe. We discussed it at Public Works Board yesterday about extensions to the cycle, because there's not going to be enough material to get everything done, even in a 12/24, but let's save that. This is a unique moment in time. There could be even more money in an infrastructure bill that they're debating. This will never happen again like this. How do you see ensuring, just in terms of selfishly, the state of Washington, how do we make sure State Broadband Office, Public Works Board, and CURB, which all have legislative authority in this arena, coordinate, for God's sake? And how much more complicated did it get this week with HB 1330 made preeminent in the courts?
Well, thanks, Ed. Good, nice softballs. Thank you. I've been going all along with 1336 is probably going to be the answer. In the end, 5383 was going to head down that pathway to where there was going to be unrestricted access. So I've kind of said, let's just act as if, and lo and behold, look what's going on. So remove that barrier, remove that excuse. We now have, you know, an open game. And to Lindsey's point earlier, there's a new tool in our toolbox. What are we going to do as a municipal? I'm talking to Jefferson PUD right now. They've gone in and they've looked at it and they said, you know what, we'd like to try to be an ISP in this game. Fantastic, I'll embrace that. What are we going to do? How do I help you? Let's identify some areas. Let's try to figure out a couple shovel-ready projects. Let's get a win on the books, right? So, you know, what will happen is these three bodies will coordinate their efforts to where, if I have it my way, and I think it's the way that we're all agreeing that will happen, is all these projects will come into a funnel basically, and that funnel will have basically a vetting tool to it that will say, you know, are your variables near correct, you know, based on what we see for cost of construction, all those kind of things, timing, funding, those kind of things. Are they correct? And if they are, good. Now they get into this other bundle, and I talked to some folks I think that you introduced me to yesterday at the Alpha Ledger folks out in Poulsbo. But we talk about, you know, in that next stage, where do we find the funds? Which funds are we going to use? Is this set up to be good in the PWB thing? Is it set up to be good under CURB? Is it set up to be embraced by the broadband office? Or does it have the potential to go out to the federal area and get USDA money so we can bring money in from out of state? You know, so then we'll identify that based on some of the criteria that this tool will allow us to say. It'll say, this one will score well on USDA. Well, in that case, I want to take that one to USDA. I want to support it with state matching funds, and I want to make certain that we get some success at that level. We'll have a grant writer. We went through a successful RFP. We've got a grant writer partner right now with the state that has tremendous success going and getting federal money. That's monster narratives. So we'll take that. We'll go and start to shape things that way, and that's the way we'll do it. And Ed, you couldn't be more correct on the supply side challenges. So one of the things we also can do as communities, you know, if we want to think outside the box a little bit, is continue to put pressure on some of that federal legislation around, can we get continuation of deadlines for these funds? You know, if you've got an end to one of our either you know, any of our congressional folks, I think conversations around, hey, 12 to 24 is going to be a little bit aggressive, given the fact that we're going to be seeing some supply side issues probably 2 years out, which puts us in this build window of what, 12 months? You know, we have the luxury of most of our state, we can kind of play around 12 months a year. There's a lot of states that, you know, that window is a 4-month window to build, you know, and that'll be a tremendous challenge for those states as well. So anything we can do to support that at the federal level.
We almost need a sync board just dedicated to broadband, separate from the sync board we have right now. And since the PUDs, Lindsey, to partly address your question, will now have authority in the state to go directly to the feds, I don't know how we make sure we're all pulling in the same direction. I really think a sync board for broadband might be the answer.
Yeah, that federal money, Ed, you know, that the PUDs will chase will primarily be FCC funds at the next round of potentially the RDOF. And when that happens, it'll happen probably a year from now or so, and there'll be billions of dollars available. And hopefully by that time, we've done good planning, we've got good projects, and we can start to put intelligent numbers on requests for projects is what I'm hoping.
Thank you. I want to be respectful of your time this morning, Russ. And we do have one more hand raised. So I would like Randy to have an opportunity to ask his question or make his comment. And then we really do appreciate your time and enthusiasm and energy and information this morning.
Thanks, Beck. Thank you.
Hey, Russ, I'll just make it quick for you. Number one, I sent you over on the chat my telephone number. I hope you will write it down. I'd love to actually meet with you when you're out here in Shelton. I'll take you out to lunch. My treat.
I'm here. Let's go.
Okay. We could do it today. Actually, I have to. Actually, you want to go to an interview with the Mason County Journal because they're going to be talking about broadband.
I've got a kindergarten graduation I have to attend, unfortunately, but I will take a rain check, Randy, and I'm writing your number down, so I will be in touch for sure.
Yes, please. And if you have an extra second, can you touch on the new thing I'm being contacted about? I'm about to have a meeting with the school districts in regards to a new type of way of delivering hotspots where instead of being 300 feet like the PUDs and the stuff we're putting out, they think they have a model where they can do a mile or several miles with the new technology. Do you know anything about that yet? This is brand spanking new. I literally am just going into a meeting with them in the next week or two.
Yeah, Randy, as you do that, I appreciate an audience with that group as well. I mean, there's a number of technologies that can do that. Obviously, this sounds like it's going to be an LTE type technology, maybe more of a cellular type technology off of schools. Given this Emergency Connect Fund, the ECF that's coming out from the FCC, all the acronyms, I think there's going to be an opportunity to extend the networks of the schools out to students, and they're going to be able to fund that. I would anticipate that we're going to see small cell development on schools that will allow for those types of these types of devices to get better service by the schools and then leverage the hotspot technology. I would guess that's what it is, but I built networks too off of schools and libraries back in the day, and we used fixed wireless. So, that's another tool that you can have in your toolbox.
Well, from what I understand, they're looking at actually putting it out into the locations. For example, this area out in the Tahuya Valley where they have the fiber optics.
Yep.
And actually placing it off of there. I didn't know they had the ability to be an end user, but I'll find out more about that. If you don't mind, you have my phone number. If you could text me yours, I will make sure that we get you into this when I'm invited. I think it would be, I'm being invited in hopes of being able to find funding for them that we may have through our monies. If we can get more, I love being the test case. It doesn't bother me one little bit. You direct, I follow. You just get my people the broadband that they need. You'll increase my bottom line on my value for my properties and everything else.
Well, I live in rural Mason County out here in Dayton Trails area, and I'm fortunate to have a local incumbent that has stretched their network based on leveraging USDA money. Yeah. And I've got fiber to the barn out here. I've got acres, got horses, they got good connectivity out there, so I'm very fortunate in that, but it took some creative thinking. We also have the PUD out here. Mason's doing a great job doing that. So I'm all about it, Randy. Let's sit down and have those conversations. I'll text you and certainly excited to hear if there's compelling technology. And don't forget, so the ECF, the Emergency Connectivity Fund that's coming out through the FCC, $7.5 billion for these efforts. 7.5 billion available open now for business. So if we have a little project here that we might be able to prove concept on, potentially we can go and chase that fund. And my grant writer is prolific at chasing that money. So we'll make that happen. So let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Really appreciate, again, your time, your energy, and the value that you brought to our organization today. Much appreciated. And in respect to your time, we will move on to our next agenda item.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So after his enthusiasm and great presentation style, we get to talk about the legislative update for next year. So last year we put in quite a bit. Oh, you didn't, Sarah, you didn't finish your Title VI stuff. Do you want to, that's even more compelling than the legislative update.
Actually, you all have been sitting there without a chance to talk for very much. And I feel like that legislative discussion might be a chance. If I defer to you if you would prefer the Title VI, but I'm just sympathetic that you've been sitting through back-to-back presentations.
Yeah. We put a great deal of energy and effort into the legislative update last year. And we were hoping this year to convene a group again of our membership, whoever wants to volunteer to be part of it. And basically what we would do is we would have a meeting or two and just discuss how we want to move forward this year. Take a look at the piece and the information we provided last year, how we connected with our legislators. Do we want to use that same format? Do we want to do something different? And just how we want to update it this year. So we're putting that, we have not selected any dates. We were just putting that out for discussion to see if that's a way you would like to move forward this year for the legislative piece that we do in our engagement with our legislators. I know Lindsey was involved last year. Michael Bateman was involved last year. I'm trying to remember who else was on that committee, probably Wendy. So anyway, I'm just opening that up for discussion. Are there any thoughts? I'm not hearing any. Would it be acceptable to the group if we put out a doodle poll and offered some time opportunities and a little outline of what we may be discussing, or do we just want to bring back something in August? I really would like to get the group engaged. We haven't been engaged for a while, and I would like to talk about perhaps the successes we had last year, if there's any information we need to update on what that may look like. Lindsey?
Yeah, I was just going to share Association of Washington Cities Legislative Priorities Committee is already meeting over the summer. And so it doesn't seem too early for us to start looking at what our regional transportation priorities are.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, put my microphone up here. I think getting engaged soon would be good. You know, I think we're all probably in the same boat with, you know, we have way too much going on and not enough people to do it, but it's really important also at the same time. And, you know, we'll carve out some time for it. We may not have the energy that we've had in the past, but I still think we need to engage and get that done. I think it's very important.
Okay, thank you. Wendy?
I just wanted to endorse your idea of sending out a doodle poll so that Commissioner Kate Dean can participate in that. She was heavily involved in the legislative priorities for Washington's Association of Counties.
Okay, perfect. I'm hearing support of putting out a doodle poll and we'll put it out to our entire membership and then pick a time and set an agenda. And I promise not to engage you for more than a couple of meetings before August. And then we will bring back some ideas for the entire group at August, because typically we pretty much finalize this in our October meeting. So if that seems to meet with everyone's approval, that's what we'll do. If I could just get some head nods or. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Okay, so expect an email from us with a doodle poll, and we'll have a couple of meetings between now and our meeting in August. I appreciate your willingness to engage in this. Thank you very much. And now we'll go on to that riveting subject, to Title VI.
You really did need a palate cleanser. So Title VI, as I was saying, it's really tough to follow, Russ, I gotta say. Title VI is, we are completing the sort of the cleanup after the transition from WSDOT to an independent organization. Title VI is required because we receive money from WSDOT, and so it's something we need to comply with, even though, as you heard earlier today, we do not handle federal money, we don't work with federal funds, but the entity that we get our money from does. And so what you have attached is a Title VI plan that is based off of the March 2021 template that we were recommended to use. And I will apologize, the language sometimes feels stilted or it's very targeted, and that's just, it's the nature of this compliance program. We're bringing it to you today for your discussion. If you have any questions or any suggestions, we'd like to hear them and consider them. And after your discussion today, we will send this to the Equal Opportunity Office at WSDOT for their review and comments. And then we would and put it out for public review and then bring it back to you for your final approval in August. And I think with that, I would just answer any questions that you might have, or accept, take any comments that you might have about it.
Wendy, I'm assuming your hand is raised from the last discussion, or did you have something to say about Title VI?
I'm making my raised hand go away. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else that has any comments or questions about our Title VI draft plan before we send it to the next stage for approval? Seeing none, Thera, I think we're fine to send that draft plan on to the next state agency that needs to review it. And again, we would be bringing it back here in August for final approval by our group. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that was easy. That was easy. And we did our legislative update. So the next thing on our agenda is just a review of our audit. And we, I can't remember who all of us sat in with the exit interview with the state auditor's office, and we received significant compliments. Sarah does an outstanding job with the record keeping. So does Kitsap Transit and Ed's group and the people he works with, providing information to Sarah. And also the details that Sarah puts in, all of the invoices that she has to Kitsap Transit. So it was a very, very clean audit, but I would like Sarah to speak to it because she's the one that worked directly with our auditor.
Thank you, Beck. So what I did is I prepared financial statements, notes to the financial statements, and this tremendous document called a Schedule 21. And I want to say that if I had not had the PRTPO resource manual, thank you, Thera, to refer back to, that would have been so much harder. It was so easy to organize and get everything put together. Only took me about 20 hours. It was not as bad as I thought it was going to be for never having had financial statements to refer to. So it was good. The auditor asked for our washed out blue invoices, our backup to support the expenses on the invoices. Thank you, Kitsap, for your, and Ed for your very detailed notes. They asked for our EFT confirmations, our bank recs, Jefferson County's statements, and they asked for a legal matters inquiry, and all of those were very easily provided. We had no issues, no findings, and our total audit, I believe the final expenditure will be about $4,500. Future audits are going to be assessment audits, which are so much easier to do. It's basically you provide all the documentation, they look at it, they say yay. So this first one was our big one, and we passed with flying colors. It was a great experience. Thanks.
Is there anyone with any questions or concerns about the audit? Or we knew, and for those of you who have not been with us for this whole transition time, when we the RTPO was trying to get someone to commit to being our lead fiscal agent, and Jefferson Transit was considering it, one of the questions Sarah had was she wanted to know what the audits would be like. So she had discussions with the state auditor's office and consequently realized that there would be an audit and the extent of that audit. But what it did is it made the state auditor's office aware that they had not been auditing any of the RTPOs around the state. And so, so now it gave them a whole new group of people to audit. And I must say, I'm also involved, as is many of the people on the call here today, like Ed and David Ford, all of this that are involved with the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council. We had our first audit ever last year to the tune of over $7,000. And we have been in existence since the mid-90s. So we have Sarah to thank for that. But it makes us all better organizations, and it provides a great service to our citizens. Everything is very transparent. They know the use of the money is being done wisely and correctly and transparently. So we thank Sarah a great deal for her expertise and professionalism in handling our books. So thank you.
Thank you.
And our next agenda item, Sarah, did you want to go over your coordinator's report?
If we have time, there's not a you know, for those who are new to PRTPO, if you're not sitting in on our meetings regularly, this is something that I provide just to give you some insights on other things that are going on in the region and work we do. And it's set up so that if there's something in particular you want to ask about, you can follow up after a meeting or before, or send this to somebody. I just want to let you know that we are, the freight and goods transportation system work is progressing. We mentioned this to you in April. We learned in May that apparently it was all to be organized through the RTPOs. We were not aware of that. So we scrambled, we especially reached out to ports, including Port of Port Townsend, who's not a member of ours, but just to make sure, because they too have industrial activities, to make sure that their first mile, last mile connectors are identified. The Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board, this is an eligibility criterion to be designated as one of these types of facilities. So we wanted to make sure our partners have access to all those resources. And then there's also, apparently the legislature has asked for a list of freight mobility projects by December of 2022. And we don't know how this is going to fit into that, but we're assuming it will somehow. So we're doing what we can to get all that input by June 30th is the deadline on that. And otherwise, I'd say just reference, if there's any questions that pop up that you're really interested in. I will point out for the transit folks, transit and tribal folks, there is a conference in October, a virtual conference from the Transportation Research Board on rural, public, and intercity bus travel. And these tend to be very informative events. And now that they're figured out how to do it in a virtual environment, and the entry price is $200. So it's a pretty reasonable entry price. It might be worth taking a look at and seeing if there's anything for your staff that would be interesting there. Otherwise, happy to answer any specific questions you might have.
Seeing none, we will ask for any public comments. This is an open public meeting and we take public comments at the end of the meeting. I'm not seeing necessarily any public members there, but we do want to provide that opportunity. Okay. Is there anything for the good of the order? Is there any, does anyone have, Mr. Cardwell does, to just share with the group?
Great. As I try to lower my hand and talk at the same time, I want to kind of follow up on a op-ed piece that I wrote in the Seattle Times in regards to updating the GMA and having it be more inclusive of tribes. Because again, when I graduated from Eastern, back in the 90s, the draft legislation had tribes in it. And as you all know, tribes are in a different place than those dark days of when we were a ward of the feds, and we were just another duty station for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I mean, certainly tribes through self-governance and gaming have become one of the largest employers in the state. They are like the largest employer in many counties. And as I tried to point out earlier, we are here as partners, in regards to transportation, infrastructure, tourism development, blah, 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 blah. I mean, all the whole damn thing. But was it 1241 ESB 1241 hit the legislature this year, and it failed. But it was the collaborative work of the University of Washington, all sorts of different folks, etc., to take a look at the shortcomings of growth management. The good news is that the legislature will be funding yet another stab at this in the legislature. So my request is to encourage the participants to get engaged and support the change in the state legislature legislative policy to embrace tribal inclusion within GMA and such, and hopefully you guys can edit this down once you get the transcript. So again, there's my rough draft of yes, it's for the good of the order. Yes, it's for public comment, and yes, I'm happy to be back amongst you all. Thank you very much.
And what I would say, Mr. Cardwell, is the Peninsula RPTO would really welcome, and we have sent invitations to the Quinault tribe to be a member of the RPTO. We have an interlocal agreement which would give you voting rights here. So that might be something your tribe would want to consider. We would sure welcome your active participation. And with that, I will ask Kevin. Kevin has his hand raised.
Yeah, just a real quick announcement. We were successfully awarded the regional mobility grant funds that we applied for the additional straight shot service. Our board approved us to move forward that Wednesday. Thank you, Lindsey, for that, as Lindsey is our board chair. So also I'd like to thank the TPO for supporting this project. Beck signed a letter of support for this on behalf of the TPO, and our plans are to implement this third run, additional run from Monday through Saturday with the Sunday morning run as well. And hopefully we'll have this up and running by about August 1st. So I just thought that would be important to the group here. So thank you, everybody.
That's great news. Ed? Oh, you're muted.
I just want to thank Thera and yourself and the rest of the staff for arranging Russ to speak to us. I don't know if it was coincidental, but you couldn't have picked a more critical moment, Thera. There are billions of dollars at stake here. And I've maintained for a long time, this is a transportation issue, paramount above all things. And good luck, Russ, in the state of Washington. We all should be aware on this board that the models we're trying to disperse this money on and the proprietary issues are akin to us building roads, bridges, and assigning them to various companies and entities, each with their own police force, speed limits, and rules. It's a real cacophony that hasn't been settled on the national level. So again, I just want to thank staff for bringing that here today. Thank you.
That was Thera. Thera had listened to him and wanted to know if we could have two presentations at one meeting. And I said, we sure could. Michael?
Yeah, I agree that was great on both counts. And I want to point out that what Ed mentioned on the supply side is not just unique to the dollars that are coming in on that, but also in our transportation dollars. We're going to see, you know, both we'll get what we want in money and we won't be able to spend it. You know, we see that, you know, like on the 305 corridor coalition, where we've got money that we could use more, but we need time to get these projects done. It takes a lot of time. And I want to echo what you said, Mr. Cardwell. Welcome. It's really great to have the Quinault here. We love it. We're all. I suspect I speak for everyone in saying we're incredibly proud of our tribal people in Washington. Excuse me. And the progress that has been made in the last decade is unbelievable. So we're happy to help as best we can. But just know that we're really proud of you guys. So welcome. And thanks again for both presentations. Were great.
Thank you. And I have a further good of the order. I want to thank the Peninsula RPTO for the opportunity to being a member and actively engaged in this group for the last 8 years. But I wanted to let everyone know that I did choose not to stand for re-election. And so I will be retiring at the end of December. And I just wanted to thank you all for letting me be a part of this. And in January, I will be doing other things. So
congratulations, but we'll never replace you. Holy cow.
So with that, if there is nothing else for the good of the order, we will stand adjourned and we will see everyone in August. We will be sending out an email, a doodle poll to see who wants to participate in our legislative update coordination, and have a great summer. And we'll see everybody in August.